Today's hyperfixation, Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. So, I've been playing through a few of Atlus's flagship titles recently and randomly felt like talking about them. I've been a little bit aware of Atlus as a developer up until Persona 5 and a reveal of Joker in Smash Bros. Ultimate, to where after that it felt like a whole new world was opened up to me. A corner of gaming that I was barely aware of and had no reason to ever check out beforehand was now revealed, and I could go anywhere from there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Dead, and let's get this video started. I feel I should get this out the way first, since this will put a few things into perspective. But when it comes to RPGs, I have found that it's a genre of games where I'm really picky with what games I actually enjoy. Outside of Square Enix projects and more specifically Final Fantasy, it's been hard finding games that can hold my attention long enough to see the credits, let alone play them for more than a few hours. And despite some overall gripes I have with Persona 5 Vanilla, it was one of the first non-Final Fantasy or Pokemon JRPGs I beat. Also, you should watch my Persona 5 Royal video, thank you. And for that alone, it stands above most other games. But when it comes to Atlus as a whole, it took me until this year for something like Shin Megami Tensei 5 to actually click with me, despite getting the game at launch. So I want to talk about what I like from these games, since now I have a good idea on why I'm starting to appreciate these games, as well as hoping these align with why other people enjoy them as well. So while earlier I did state that SMT as a whole didn't click for me until this year, I did enjoy a few of the games beforehand, and elements of others since the beginning. The tone is the biggest thing that I enjoyed initially though. For SMT Mainline, the stories seem to be with reshaping the world after it's ended. I say seem to because at this point I have only played 5 and Nocturne, and both of them have you in a post-apocalyptic setting. Because of this, these games have the sense of everything being fucked, and you, the player, having to find some way to make sense of this new world, with some light brevity few and far between. This is a world that is overrun with demons after all, each different type of them having their own wants and desires out of this new world, some wanting to go around and make everything for the worst, and some that literally just want to exist in their own little corner, which is kind of interesting to me. That while SMT is pretty bleak at times, not everything is like that, even if sometimes it is small. Then on the opposite end, you have the Persona games. Well, yes, these games do take themselves serious, especially in the case of 3. I'm not too sure about 1 and the 2 duology, though they do seem to as well. For the most part, they're much more upbeat when compared to its older brother. I'm sure you've heard before, but Persona 4 is the most chill game that has a murder mystery as the focus of its plot. And yeah, it's kinda true, at least for me. Like playing P4, I genuinely forgot at times that at the end of the day, we have to stop a murderer, but I'm too busy hanging out with Nanako and trying to date Chie. And Persona 5, while also having some very serious moments, is also a game that wants you to have an enjoyable time while playing, which can be a nice change of pace even outside of the context of SMT. If I did have to point at one game with my favorite use of tone, it would most likely be in Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor is a game I could easily make a video on one day after I beat it, but to keep it short to this section, I love the atmosphere of this game. It's on the bleak side of the SMT games, especially with its premise. For the TLDR of the plot of Devil Survivor, a section of Japan is closed off one day from the rest of the world seemingly at random. You eventually find out that there is going to be a huge demon invasion 7 days from then, and the government was aware of it and sealed off this section to minimize casualties. That's not even a fraction of what goes on in the story, but I'm sure you can imagine some of the feelings while playing the opening hours. You feel the confusion and desperation from these characters as they try to figure out what's going on and how to get out. It's honestly a unique feeling that I'm not used to seeing in many video games, and I think that's why this is something that keeps me invested in the series. And while Persona is nowhere near as bleak, its tone being almost the opposite of SMT is a nice balance if you ask me. So, TLDR dissection? Play Devil Survivor, it's pretty good, just ignore the voice acting. Other than that, the game's pretty great. This for sure is a draw for most everybody that plays these games, definitely more relatable than tone, but fans of SMT and fans of Persona really fucking love the gameplay for their respective series. We started with the SMT last section, so let's start with Persona for this one. If you played Pokemon, I think there are a few things that can be applied to not only Persona but SMT as well. These games share exploiting weaknesses and monster collecting, though both are handled much differently than in Pokemon. For starts, with the monsters in these games, you're not really supposed to hold on to them for very long. Even the first Persona you get in 3, 4, and 5, you tend to get rid of them pretty fast. And what do I mean by get rid? Well, there is a thing in both games called fusion, where you take two demons or personas and make a whole new one. You're also able to bring over skills learned from both prior demons, which is great if the skill fits the new entity they will form. While all this is great, I feel the main draw for Persona specifically is its social sim element. Persona has a calendar system to where you go day to day, hanging out with friends, doing jobs, or summoning Satan. The hanging out with friends bit is really what the whole calendar system revolves around, since a big part of it is a thing that the games call social links or confidants in the case of Persona 5. Social links are pretty much this system to where the more you hang out with certain characters, the closer you will get to them, as you find out more about their struggles, their goals, and even issues they have had in the past or during the course of the social link. Some are good and some are but it's a nice way of getting to know more about characters like the main cast outside of story situations. Social links also tie into gameplay, since the further you're into a social link, the better it will make the personas you fuse, and by Persona 5, doing them will even give the character in your party abilities that are really helpful in battle and make doing them that much more worth it. The calendar system in Persona is such an easy gameplay loop that once you get into the groove of things, you will soon find yourself dumping hours into these games. I'm sure people who are aware of SMT are also aware of one thing: press turn. For those out of the loop, in a typical turn-based game, there is an order that characters go in referred to as a turn order. In some games, it's based on stats like speed, and others like SMT, the allies all go in one turn and then the enemies go on the next. So, where press turn comes into play is that during either side's turn, each character has an action represented by the icons in the corner. But by doing things like hitting enemy weaknesses and landing critical hits, will add another action the characters can do, represented by the then glowing icon. If you have the max of 4 demons out in your party, and all land a crit or a weakness, it can lead to you having at most 8 possible actions. That's not all that can affect it though. If a character misses an attack, or the attack gets blocked, nullified, or absorbed, you will then lose 2 action. What makes press turn interesting is the fact that it goes for both sides. The enemy misses an attack, they lose 2 actions. They land a crit, and they gain 1. What the high damage output characters can do, paired with the press turn elements, makes even a normal battle have higher stakes than in most games. I even appreciate that things like buffs and debuffs matter a whole lot more than they seem to in like Final Fantasy, which actually leads to my favorite meme I've seen. Enemies can lose actions if they miss, so having skills that can raise your evasion and or skills that can lower that for the enemy are kind of a must for me. Press turn so far is one of my favorite elements I've seen in a JRPG. I like that it's unbiased to the player. An enemy that has a skill you're weak to is not afraid of hitting you with it a few times, paired with the fact that if you, the party leader, dies, it is an automatic game over. It can make the smallest of fights be exciting and engaging. I stated earlier that it's kinda hard for me to find other JRPGs I can sit down and want to see to the end. Right now, some of the only ones that can consistently get me to stick around have been Final Fantasy and Xenoblade. So believe me when I say that me liking these games enough to beat them is kind of big for me. I have my gripes with some of these games. I don't think they're perfect, but these games are definitely great, and some of them I love. If I were to recommend some of the games I like from SMT and Persona, Persona 4 Golden and Persona 5 Royal are both great places to start if you want something to ease you into Persona, while Shin Megami Tensei 5 is that for the mainline SMT series, though the games that stand out the most for me would be Persona 3 FES and Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor Overclocked. Both of these games, in my opinion, are amazing, but are stuck on consoles that are not necessarily easy to come by. I would also shout out Digital Devil Saga, but I'm like 3 hours into that. But so far, it's been something I feel like I would really like by the end of all of it. If I interested you at all in these games, then I did my job. But let me know how I did. Or if you already like Atlas and SMT/Persona stuff, let me know some of your favorite games, or games I should try. I do want to get to SMT4 and Strange Journey, and maybe even give Nocturne another go now that I understand things more. And I'm also planning on looking at the Etrian Odyssey series, also developed by Atlas. And with that, I am done. I have been dead. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.